So I was going to read this short paragraph in a Polygamy and Monogamy book about the Indian chief and his two wives. This chief, at the time of his conversion to Christianity, was living with two wives. The one first married was now aged, blind, and childless. The other was young, attractive, healthful, and the mother of one fine boy. One of these wives, the missionaries required him to put away as an indispensable requirement to baptism and church membership. The old chief, after careful deliberation, could not decide which one to repudiate. The first he was bound by every honorable motive to love and to cherish, especially on account of her age and infirmity, while the other was devotedly attached to him, and was the mother of his only child, an heir, which he could not give up, and from which he could not separate the mother. He therefore submitted the case to the missionaries to decide which one of them he should put away. They decided against the younger one. And as he was old himself, and his other wife was barren, that she must also give up her child. This mandate was obeyed with martyr-like fortitude, which nothing but the strongest religious motives could have inspired. Opposed as it was to every natural sentiment of love and honor, and thus in 1 hour was that young wife and mother deprived of her husband, her child, her character, and her home, and sent away a bereaved and lonely outcast into the wide world. The report which the missionaries themselves gave of this affair closed by saying that the repudiated wife and bereaved mother soon died, inconsolable and broken-hearted. So, these New Testament passages that these pastors, the church, use to demonize multiple wives, to call it sin, and to ban it from the church. They use Jesus in Matthew 5:19, Mark and Luke. They use these verses, even though contextually, Jesus is talking about divorcing and putting away women incorrectly. And he's saying he's against divorce and against putting away a woman. Yet, the church is fine with that. They're fine with divorce and putting away women, even though Jesus is not. What they are not fine with is a man having two wives, even though contextually Jesus is not even talking about that. And he's not against it either. Look at all the patriarchs. When these missionaries came over to America, right here, one of the most widespread specific forms of this practice across the Americas was sororal polygyny, where a man would marry two or more sisters. Historically, this arrangement was often preferred because sisters already shared a lifelong bond, which tended to minimize jealousy and make managing a shared household much more harmonious than it might be with unrelated co-wives. The impact of colonization. When European colonists and missionaries arrived, their rigid adherence to monogamy created immediate and severe cultural clashes. European authorities viewed indigenous marriages customs as scandalous and actively sought to dismantle them. Over time, through forced assimilation, widespread religious conversion, and the eventual imposition of the United States and Canadian legal system, the traditional practice of polygyny among Native American tribes was legally abolished and faded out of practice. Their rigid adherence to monogamy. Even though there's nowhere in Scripture about monogamy being enforced and being the standard and polygyny being a sin, they hold that doctrine from the devil to their heart and are so rigid to it. Yet when it comes to divorce and putting away, they're fine with it. They don't care, even though Jesus preaches against it multiple times. They are fine with it. You go to these churches. If you have two or three wives, you'll be kicked out. If you have 2 or 3 divorces, though, come on in. No problem. You can be a pastor. You can be a bishop. It don't matter. Even though that's directly against what Yeshua wanted and what he's talking about in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The church holds these man-made doctrines from the devil as higher than Scripture. And like I just read, it destroys the family, separating families and destroying them. When they went to preach the gospel to these other, in Africa, the Americas, where they were practicing multiple wives, what do they tell them? You gotta get rid of all of them except one, and then you can be baptized. Where does the Bible say that? They are holding the man-made doctrine higher than Scripture. They are creating stumbling blocks, while their own churches is strife with fornication, divorce, and adultery. I mean, Jesus' teachings about divorce. He's having a discussion with Pharisees. And they use these verses that are contextually about divorce and putting away to ban polygyny, multiple wives. And they say monogamy is the only way. Any other way is sin. Really? Well, he's talking about divorce and putting away is sin. And if you do it incorrectly, you're committing adultery, which adulterers go to hell. Yet, again, you go to these churches, everyone's been divorced, everyone's committing adultery, and if you can be a pastor and be on your second or third wife, it don't matter. But God forbid a man take 2 wives righteously. So, what these churches are doing, are banning something that all the perfect and righteous men in the Bible did, and are enforcing something that is of the world, that is from pagan Romanism, Greco law, from the devil. They are holding these doctrines of demons higher than what the Bible actually says, and are twisting the words of Jesus to enforce that. They don't care what Jesus says, because if they actually cared, they wouldn't be taking these verses about divorce. They would care more about divorce and putting away of women, because that's what Jesus is talking about. They would care more about that than of a man having 2 wives, because nowhere does Jesus ever preaches against polygyny, or Paul, or Peter. Yet they preach against divorce and adultery and fornication. And guess what's rampant in the church? All of those things. And you are welcomed into the church if you do those things. But you will be kicked out, God forbid you have another wife. Even though the men in the Bible not only had multiple wives, had multiple concubines. And what's the difference between those two? So, at the end of the day, as a man, you need to study thyself approved. Walk in the footsteps of Yeshua. Walk in the footsteps of the men of the Bible. Do what they did. And you'll be fine. What do? They kept Torah. Had faith. Had multiple wives. They were not divorcing. They were not putting away. They were not sleeping around. And they were keeping Torah. And these missionaries are so self-righteous that they are committing sin and enforcing standards that are causing them these people that they're trying to turn to Christ, they are causing them to sin. Because they are sinning when they divorce and put away their extra wives. That's what Jesus is talking about. But these missionaries enforce it in order to be baptized. Where does it say that? Nowhere. They're enforcing their man-made doctrines of the devil because they are self-righteous when they need it, and they are judging. They think they are so perfect when they don't even know what the law says or care about it, because they just say it's done away with. So that's all for this one.